You are students, some of your who are going to be watching this are lawyers also. And for the young minds, take up the legal profession. It challenges you. And that challenge is so exciting that you don't need any external motivation at all. The exciting part of my profession, apart from my fee earning matters, is being appointed as amicus curiae. I have been appointed amicus curiae on many occasions. In fact, I was arguing a matter in Punjab and Haryana High Court, and I was appointed amicus curiae to assist the court when they were hearing a matter regarding screening and release of Udta Punjab matter.
You have been in the legal profession since a long time, so our viewers want to know what kind of a journey you have had into this profession, what inspired you to become a lawyer, and what have been the highs and the lows so far.
Well, it's been a terrific journey, and I was born in 1967 when Supreme Court had constituted an 11-judge bench to hear the celebrated Golaknath case. Okay. On the basic structure of the constitution. So my pet name in the house was Golaknath, everyone, because I come from a family of lawyers. I'm a third generation lawyer. And everyone used to call me Golaknath, Golaknath baby, Golaknath baby in that sense. But so the atmosphere in the house was, having lawyers all around. Discussions were on various legal topics. And that kind of always intrigued me. I started off in St. Xavier's High School, Dobitalau, which kind of gave me this cosmopolitan outlook to life, After that, Government Law College, 3 years, topper, gold medalist, stood first class first. But what happens is this, you may top everywhere, you may excel in moot courts. I failed in all my moot courts. I couldn't argue a simple matter. But ultimately, when you come to the court, the entire court atmosphere, and that's not only the courtroom, it's the registry, it's the bar room, it's the library, your brothers and sisters in the profession, and then briefing seniors, getting objections removed, all those kind of things. That kind of really shapes you up as, but those few years, they pass. And one should not really tax your brains too much on that. That's a learning process in life. And I've been through all that. It's my 28th year in the profession. Yeah. I don't think that I would have become anything else. Okay. I think perhaps it was my destiny, and I'm really enjoying it. The exciting part of my profession, apart from my fee earning matters, is being appointed as amicus curiae. You know what is amicus curiae? And for all our young friends hearing this chat, amicus curiae is when the court calls upon you as a friend of the court to assist you on a certain question of law or a certain matter. I have been appointed amicus curiae on many occasions. In fact, I was arguing a matter in Punjab and Haryana High Court. And I was appointed amicus curiae to assist the court when they were hearing a matter regarding screening and release of Udta Punjab matter. Okay. So then I was appointed in a smuggling matter over here in Bombay. Was appointed in the drought affected persons PIL. So that is the amicus curiae part. But I've also done a lot of pro bono. Pro bono again is free of charge. Litigations for society. That is the Kamla Mills matter, for example. I was arguing the Kamla Mills, that horrible incident, and thereafter the guidelines and they were laid down. Tigress Avni matter, the Ghatkopar building crash matter, where I was representing the victims' families. So it's been a very exciting journey, and that's it. I'm in front of you.
Okay. So as a young student, in your initial years, was there any trigger that took you to deciding that, okay, I want to study law? Or were there any traits and attributes that you had that you thought were best fit for you to be a lawyer?
Well, I used to, we have a lot of these lawyer functions happening all the time. And there is a judge who is appointed, there is a judge who retires, and bar functions, marriages, weddings, and most of the invitees are lawyers.
Okay.
So I used to actually pressurize my dad, request him again and again, Dad, take me also. So my dad used to say, you're not invited. I said, no, I want to come. Now, when I used to accompany my dad, he used to introduce me to great counsels. I have had the privilege of meeting as a school-going and college-going boy, great counsels, Mr. Nariman, Mr. Sorabji, Mr. Palkhiwala.
Mhm.
And what happened was that the way they spoke to me, putting their hand on my shoulder. So I never had that great thing about the aura or, some kind of a wall in front. I was very easygoing with them. Ashok Bhai, who just expired, Mr. Ashok Desai, Anil Diwan, now his son, Mr. Sham Diwan, I have assisted him also. He's practicing in the Supreme Court. So that whole atmosphere made things very easy for me. Then I used to go to court also. From school and college. And I used to watch proceedings. So I just loved the whole atmosphere. And that's what I said, that I don't think there was possibly any profession or business other than law which I was ever going to take up. Nobody forced me to this profession. I got into it on my own.
So a question that immediately comes to my mind is, was there some kind of pressure upon you to live up to the expectations of having esteemed lawyers and counsels and judges in your own family? And did that create some kind of pressure on you anytime?
Like in life, everything has its advantages and disadvantages. So when you have esteemed lawyers and successful lawyers already in your family, around you, definitely there is a lot of expectation. But fortunately for me, my dad was a great guy. He never put any pressure on me. In fact, he encouraged me to go and argue your matter. Go and argue this matter. And that was amazing. And that's what I have done to almost a dozen of my juniors that were with me. That go and argue the matter. I'll see what happens. So that's how you kind of encourage your juniors and pass on the traditions. You are students. Some of your who are going to be watching this are lawyers also. So, and for the young minds, take up the legal profession. It challenges you. And that challenge is so exciting that you don't need any external motivation at all. Once you get into this legal profession, it's like a jealous mistress, as they say. The law is a jealous mistress. It will consume you and it will give you such joy. It will give you a lot of benefits also. But never forget your duty to the society and keep some part of your practice to giving back to society, like how I try. And I think that is what the takeaway message I wanted to give, to encourage more and more people to become lawyers. I think it's the greatest profession, apart from being the oldest profession, the greatest profession.
Right. So, sir, after this warm-up conversation, we'll move on to some more pressing and serious concerns that we face in the public sphere, in our public discourse. So I was reading an article in the Outlook magazine in January, and it said that over the few years, people's trust and faith in the judicial system has lessened. It has weakened, and there's a lot of credibility crisis that the judicial system in our country faces. So how do you view this?
Judiciary is one of the pillars of our democratic system. It's a very, very integral part of our entire nation. Judiciary is the last bastion of hope in our country. And for all the wrongs that are happening, it is ultimately the court that a person has to approach. I do believe that there has been an erosion. But look, there are going to be certain bad apples everywhere. But that doesn't mean that you can undermine the great judges and the landmark judgments. Now, the journey of the Supreme Court from 1950 onwards, if you see, unparalleled in history. the kind of judgments that they have laid down, judges have actually taken up cudgels with the bureaucracy and the executive, only for the citizen. And that should not be forgotten. Right from the lowest level, your JMFC, Sessions Court, High Court, Supreme Court, I think judges are doing a great job. And just because some article is written or something is published somewhere or some loose talk, for 1 second also my faith, and I know that my brethren practicing in the Bombay High Court, the Magistrate Court, the Sessions Court, their faith and belief in the judiciary, it remains unshakable.
Sir, you have rightly pointed out that judiciary is the last bastion of hope for common people. And in this concern, we often hear common people saying that justice delayed is justice denied. That's a maxim that we as young people, as young students have been hearing a lot about. So this increasing burden of cases on the Indian judiciary, number one, how does the judicial system deal with this in the coming times?
Look, we are a litigating society. We litigate over everything possible. It's in our genes, it's in our DNA. That's on one hand. Secondly, we are just too many people. Realize the fact. Now, considering the amount of people, maybe in 1 square kilometer, or if you take, that pro rata count, we don't have that many judges. The real problem is that the government has neglected this arm of our democratic setup, the judiciary. What we need is to appoint young, bright minds, encourage them. We need to give them good salaries. We need to improve other facilities. We need to give each and every benefit and privilege that comes to a lawyer with his practice. He may earn a very high amount of money in his field. But if he has to give up his career and take up this sacred position and get elevated to the bench, you have to make things conducive. According to me, even the retirement age should become 70, because you retire a High Court judge at 62, a Supreme Court judge at 65. They are at the peak of their intellectual capacity with the great experience that they have garnered. Give them fantastic salaries, improve their working environment, I'm sure, and appoint more and more judges. Government needs to encourage. They cannot sit on files for months and months and months after a person is called upon by the collegium of his or her parent High Court. Said, look, we are looking at you. Would you be interested? That person gives his consent. Then if that person has to wait for 6, 7, 8 months, you see, those are the things. We need to iron out these creases. And I am sure that lots and lots of young, bright minds will accept being elevated to the bench. That is what we need. Our country needs more judges.
Okay. Sir, how do you view the concept of judicial accountability? Because in public discourse, we often hear people saying that every system of the government is accountable. The government is accountable. We can vote it out after every 5 years. The bureaucracy, even though it's permanent, there is still some accountability. But there is a lot of grouse against two institutions, one judiciary and second media. A lot of people feel that these are institutions that are not accountable. They don't have anyone to answer to. They can go scot-free. So how do you view this concept of judicial accountability, and is there something happening in this regard in our country?
No, judges are accountable. Judges are accountable. They have to maintain their records, their disposals. There are judges who are sitting above them in the higher judiciary, always watching. The media is watching. The lawyers are watching. You see, that is the concept, and that is the benefit of an open court trial or a hearing, which is a part of our legal system. It's part of the law that trials or court proceedings have to be held in open court. This itself is an aspect of accountability. And let me tell you this, in my experience of the last 28, 29 years, hearings in open court definitely makes it a very solemn and sacred affair, because lawyers are accountable. Even lawyers have to be accountable. Clients have to be accountable. And accordingly, the judges are accountable. So I don't see that there is any lack of accountability as far as judges are concerned. Judges are also human beings. They may also be having a bad day. So
Right.
you have to give them some kind of, freeway into, as they say, some play in the joints. They are doing a job sitting on the dais from morning to evening, hearing lawyers like me again and again, applying their mind, and ultimately someone has to lose. So that person is going to go outside the courtroom and say, "Yeah, ये तो कुछ समझता ही नहीं है."
Mhm.
I mean, so despite all these issues, I think our judges, our magistrates, our sessions court judges, high court judges, and Supreme Court judges are doing a marvelous job. Let me tell you that.
Since you said that they are doing a marvelous job, then why do you think that the overall generic public or popular impression about the judiciary is not so good? At least in popular media discourse, the judiciary is not viewed favorably. For example, a lot of times when my lawyer friends, they get long vacations, okay, especially in the summer break. So we always question, oh, itna sara lamba vacation queue? Like you're so privileged, you're getting a long vacation. So how does the legal fraternity improve or better the public perception that they have in people's minds and eyes?
I think you have asked many questions rolled up into one, but just because we lawyers get so many holidays, or maybe we follow that calendar system from ages, that you cannot blame the judiciary for that. Let me give you an example. Rajasthan becomes very hot in the summer. Temperatures go up to 50 degrees. The courts sit at 8 o'clock in the morning. This is what justice delivery is. That adjustments are made in schedules. Now, this time we don't have any vacation.
Right.
There is a circular which has come.
Yes.
Our summer vacation has gone because of Corona.
Right.
But you're right. Vacations can be reduced. That can be discussed at a later stage. But even in vacation, you have vacation judges who have given up their holidays and they are sitting as vacation judges, because you see what happens. Everything may stop, but justice delivery system should always continue. You have night magistrates. Our young students should know that I have appeared before even night magistrates and obtained bail. So a judge is a judge 365 days of the year, and he keeps on working, and that is the greatness.
Yeah, so my next question is about the RTI Act. In the RTI Act, we don't see the inclusion of political parties, number one. We also don't see the inclusion of the judicial institutions. So do you see that in the near future, there'll be a demand for more judicial accountability, even though it exists in some form right now as well? And there may be a movement to have judiciaries included in the RTI Act, where people can file RTI petitions and find out more information, track their cases, etc., etc.
No, I think that if you bring the RTI system too much into the functioning of the judiciary, it will do more harm than good. I'll tell you why. Already, court orders are available on the internet. Even a small 2-line order is available on the internet. There are websites operating, and it is very easy. You may be sitting in New York and you can still access a Bombay High Court website. So as far as that transparency in the system is concerned, it's there. Then you have public hearings, you have open hearings. Unless in sensitive cases, you can't have. But all the hearings are open to the public. So I think the system that is continuing today definitely needs more of digitization, maybe the equipment for the judges to enable them to have a proper dictation. We need air-conditioned courtrooms as far as lower judiciary is concerned. I think that is the need of the hour. It is already very transparent and accountable. And my brothers and sisters in the profession are extremely happy. In fact, we are missing the court action.
Okay. Sir, I would like to go to the question of judicial reforms next, because there's been a lot of talk about it. So, in the first part of the question, I would like to hear from you what idea of judicial reforms does the legal fraternity in India propose in a broader way? And second, how serious and urgent are these judicial reforms uh, pertaining to the context that we are living in? We are living in a digitized era. You're saying that the judiciary is accountable. Yet, is there need for specific reforms that the fraternity would like to see implemented quickly in the near future?
No, I think the way the system is progressing, as far as the reforms in the judiciary are concerned, I don't think you need anything more. You need more digitization. You need more assistance to the judges. And now you have law clerks who actually assist the judges. They sit with judges, and it's a great experience for when I was in college, we didn't have that system. So, in fact, the young students today are having legal software. News immediately reaches them through
Okay.
social media or legal platforms, or through SEC online. You have the judgments, etc., etc. So I think accessibility to orders may be passed in Guwahati, in Bombay, has become at the click of a button now.
Right.
So times have changed, and it's a great thing going. What we need, as I said earlier also, and your question overlaps your earlier question, is we need more judges
Okay.
and we need more courtrooms. That is the need of the hour.